Where is Blackfire, one of two House Targaryen's Valyrian steel swords that has gone missing? If you've been watching A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, you would have heard Egg sing about Blackfire. The Blackfire he's singing about is Daemon Blackfire, but the original Blackfire is a sword. And you would have most definitely seen it in House of the Dragon. The sword is known as a hand and a halfer, so it falls in between a long sword and a great sword. Another name for this type of sword is bastard sword. The sword originally belonged to Aegon the Conqueror and he wielded it during his conquest. Aegon was cremated with the sword, but his second son Maegor retrieved the sword after the burning. The sword was unharmed, but it was made darker due to the flames. Aegon's eldest son Aenys was made king after he passed, and he granted the sword to Maegor. The next owner of the sword is King Jaehaerys, who wielded the sword in his trial by combat versus Sir Braxton Beesbury. Next up we have Aegon II, you'll know him from House of the Dragon. He had Blackfire during the dance, and for many people this sword was a symbol of the monarchy, so it really helped people believe he was the one true king. The next known owner was Daeron the Young, and he held the sword during his conquest of Dorne. However, he did die with the sword in hand, but somehow the sword was eventually returned to House Targaryen. How? We don't know yet. And then we get the most interesting part of the journey of the sword, and that is Aegon the Unworthy, and he grants the sword to his illegitimate son, Daemon, instead of his legitimate son, Daeron. Daeron is the father to Maekar and Baelor. After Daemon, the illegitimate child, was granted the sword, he took the name Blackfire as his last name, and then on Aegon the Unworthy's deathbed, he made all of his illegitimate children legitimate. So in the eyes of the law, Daemon Blackfire was now a legitimate son of the Targaryen dynasty. So the sword Blackfire was no longer in the hands of House Targaryen, it was in the hands of House Blackfire. Daemon Blackfire would wield the sword Blackfire in his rebellion against the Iron Throne, and it would all lead to the Battle at the Red Grass, where he was defeated after a legendary duel with Gwaine Corbray that went on for an hour. The arrows came raining down on Daemon Blackfire and he was slain, but then his son Aemon would pick up the sword, but then he was taken out in the battle as well. Daemon's then half-brother, Bittersteel, also known as Aegor Rivers, picked up Blackfire and rallied his forces against the Targaryen forces. This would lead to a duel against Brynden Rivers, his half-brother, and Daemon Blackfire's half-brother, all sons to Aegon the Unworthy, but without the same mothers, and this would lead to Brynden Rivers losing an eye, but they were losing, so they had to retreat. He would then flee across into Essos and start the Golden Company. And the sword? No one knows where it is. We do know that Aegor Rivers refused to give the sword to Daemon Blackfire II for his second Blackfire rebellion, and it was doomed from the start, so no wonder he gave him the sword anyway. It didn't give him the sword anyway. But he lived his life in Essos. He passed in Essos, building the Golden Company, and the sword, nowhere to be seen.